Get away from me. Leave this bottle if you want to leave alive. No, please don't. The battle in the storeroom continued to ignite little by little until it reached the point of a massacre. And even after that, it continued burning more and more. There were a lot of people in the restaurant. It's the only restaurant in the city after all. What that drunkard said about the end of the Future Knights gang may be wrong. But it didn't matter after the situation turned this way. After seeing the owner of the restaurant being killed in front of them, all of those present in the restaurant right now will now be responsible in front of the gang, and all of them will most likely be made an example of by the gang and get killed in some horrible way. And that will even if they leave now without touching anything. Either the gang was really killed, which means that the main food resource in the city is doomed, or that the gang is alive and will come after them to kill them. In both cases, it's a disaster that requires an urgent escape from this city. Their best chance is to take everything they can carry and then take their families out of town at once, but everyone was thinking the same way, and everyone in this era has gained enough brutality to kill for the slightest reason. During the battle between the dozens of individuals, a young man kicked the restaurant door so hard from the outside that he broke it. That young man then entered the restaurant with red eyes and a body full of wounds and drenched in blood. It seemed as if he had just come out of a life-or-death battle with a monster at the bottom of hell, but despite his state, the killing intent coming from him was still burning fiercely. But this killing intent didn't last for long. After that young man entered, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. Instead of the luxurious and quiet restaurant in his memory, the restaurant in which no one dared to breathe heavily, he found bodies lying on the ground wherever he looked and found the storeroom in which dozens of people were fighting over some bread and wine. His first astonishment eased the intensity of the killing intent that was filling him. Then he began to look around him more slowly, until he found the owner of the restaurant lying on his stomach and blood flowing from every part of his body. It was clear that he was deader than dead. The young man gave a long sigh and then gave up his offensive stance. His back, which was straight and ready to fight, bent a little. One of my hands was busy carrying a bag that looked heavy, and the other wrapped it around his stomach to prevent bleeding. Then he looked next to him, towards the only person he found still sitting next to the door eating his food in peace. Without warning or words, the youth took 2 steps and sat in front of that person, and put the bag next to his feet. The young man continued to look at the face of the person in front of him without saying a word, just watching him for a few seconds as he chewed his food and swallowed it, and then raised another piece towards his mouth with his almost dead eyes. Even after the young man sat in front of him, that person, for over a minute, it looked as if he did not see anyone. "Sai, I don't know how, but I can't determine your strength level. It means that either you are just weak and mentally retarded and don't know what's going on around you right now, or you know that you are strong enough to get out of here alive whenever you wanted to. But since you are still alive even now in these difficult times, that means you are probably of the second type." The young man spoke with great difficulty, still pressing his wounds. "You look a little familiar. Where have I seen you before? Anyway, listen, I have a good deal for you in which you won't lose anything but 2 minutes of your time. Do you care?" The young man slowly pushed the bag he was carrying with his left foot and brought it closer to the person sitting in front of him. "This bag contains high-level energy stones, a few treasures, and some food and drink. It's all yours. Munch." Gulp. The bearded person did not raise another bite to his mouth, but with the side of his eye he glimpsed at the bag, which was relatively open, and in it, he saw clearly everything the young man was describing. It was actually far more than just a few treasures and food. Then the bearded person looked at the young man again and said one word: "Why? I dug a deep grave 2 streets away from here. You will come with me there. I will jump into it, and all you have to do is to cover me with the mud I prepared there. But you have to promise me that there will be no trace of the grave when you are done. After that you feel free to take this bag and go. What do you think of this?" The young man said excitedly. The bearded person looked at the young man in front of him for a couple of seconds. He had already guessed the reason, but he repeated the question again anyway. "Why? I have done the worst thing a human can do these days. I've broken through to knighthood." The young man leaned his back on the chair again and looked toward his stomach, which was oozing with blood. "My aura covered a large part of the city in a battle a while ago. The demons must be looking for me now. I don't regret it. I achieved what I wanted and I can die in peace, but I want to keep my body. When I imagine that these filthy things are going to eat my flesh, I feel like dash. I feel like... Sai, please, you have to help me hide my body. The bearded person looked at the young man in front of him. The boy is just a teenager, around 17 years old, and his breakthrough to knighthood at this age means that he is a genius by all standards, but now he wants to pay someone to bury him alive. Do you really want to die? The bearded person asked again in a low voice. Yeah. I have nothing left to live for. I have been through hell in this world. Dying in peace is the only hope for me now. Okay, I'll help you, but in my own way. And the bearded person nodded and almost added something, but at that moment a voice came into his head that only he could hear. Robin? What are you doing on your nascent planet? Why aren't you in Nahari? Robin froze when he heard those words. They were just thoughts that appeared in his head without a distinct voice or anything. Yet as soon as he heard them, he knew immediately who was speaking, but he didn't know what to respond with, or rather, he was trying so hard to restrain himself from what he wanted to say. His previous straight face, which froze for a moment, started to shiver, and his brows began to come closer to each other. Little by a little, Robin's face turned from emotionless into extreme anger. He closed his mouth, which was open a moment ago as he was speaking with the young man, started clenching his hand that was holding the rabbit's thigh, and crushed the bones in his hand into dust. And without even noticing, he allowed a dark, bloody aura to seep out. The character of the bearded person transformed from someone indifferent to the horrors of the world around him to someone who is representing the horrors of the world. The young man sitting in front of him was scared silly upon seeing this. And that aura! The young man quickly stood up and gave a deep bow and then spoke in horror. I am sorry. I didn't know I was asking an expert like yourself to do something so naive. I'm really sorry. I will take my leave. Then he quickly took a step towards the door, forgetting even his bag that he had left behind next to Robin. But at that moment Robin reached out, grabbed the young man's arm and spoke. I told you I was going to help you. You want me to take my word back? Sit down. Cage. Robin's words may be encouraging as he talks of help and promise and good things, but the anger that was so evident on his face and his ruthless fist with which he nearly crushed the boy's arm without realizing, made the young man about to wet his pants. He gathered whatever courage he still has in him and spoke. But the aura you unleash now will attract the demons. They are definitely on the way now. We both have to run. I told you to sit down. Robin shouted again. He himself was absent-minded, not knowing whether he was yelling at the young man himself or trying to release some of his agitated feelings. The young man did not know what this strange person had in store for him, but he accepted his fate and returned to his seat, as he was told. Hey, what is going on here? Which one of you was yelling right now? You think it's your mom's house? A person covered in blood came from inside the storeroom with a long dagger and pointed at Robin. Clearly, the blood on his body was not his. The battle inside the storeroom was almost over already. 5 people agreed to divide everything between them and joined forces to kill the rest. And this was one of them. Who gave you the permission to speak? Robin shouted loudly when he heard this person's words and looked at him with a murderous look. Literally a murderous look. That person fell on his back, with his fist still clenching on his dagger. But the defense is that he turned into a lifeless corpse, one without a head. And the head was not seen anywhere around, or more correctly, it could be seen everywhere. It was blown into extremely small pieces. The young man jerked and lowered his head even more so that it almost touched his stomach. Robin hit the table and yelled angrily when he saw this. Stop squeezing whatever rotten blood that's left in you. You are not allowed to die before I help you as promised. Understood? What, haven't you seen someone use the minor heavenly law of blood pressure to blow a scum's head off before? I have used hundreds of those minor heavenly laws and killed thousands of those scum on my little trip in the past few months alone. Do you think you are special because you killed some local gang members? Do you think you have defeated the system now and will die a hero? Hey! Stop crying like a little girl. Raise your head and look me in the eye. Man up. Didn't you just tell me you wanted to die? Where is your courage now? You said you have been through hell in your life? You haven't gone through shit. Hey, what is going on here? Another man came out of the storeroom with a few bottles of liquor under his armpit. But before he could finish his sentence, Brother Harvey, go out and find out what's going on in the young man sitting in front of Robin still closed his eyes. But he knew very well what had just happened. That strange bearded guy killed the last 5 people in the restaurant. He killed 3 of them without even seeing them. Who would do such a thing? And what the hell is this minor heavenly law of blood pressure? The boy couldn't control his temper after that, and some urine started leaking from him. As for Robin, he didn't care about anything else. He just closed his eyes and rested his chin on both hands, then began to try to normalize his heartbeat and breathing. He anticipated this day and feared it at the same time. He couldn't have easily summoned the all-seeing God any time he wanted by contacting the all-seeing God's soul fragment in him. But he chose not to. He had anger in him that could pile up into mountains. He really wanted to face the all-seeing God and demand an explanation of what happened. But can a mortal question a God? So he waited for the day all-seeing God appeared by himself and deal with it then. Unfortunately, it came much faster than he expected. 5 minutes later. Hey! Who dared? And 5 demons in the knighthood realm and 1 in the sainthood realm entered the restaurant, with angry features and bloody dark auras. Their mere presence would make all those at energy foundation levels fall on their faces in terror. But as soon as they entered, they heard a voice from the side. This person is exempt from the death sentence. He can roam freely within the boundaries of this city, provided that he does not bully the innocents who are not affiliated with any gangs. Also, set up a barrier around this area. No one is allowed to approach this restaurant for a distance of at least 100 feet. I don't even want to hear the sound of a mosquito. Understood. Who the hell are you to talk to us like that? Their chief, the demons in the sainthood realm, took a step towards Robin with his claws ready to tear him apart. It had been more than a year since it had moved on this continent, and no human had ever spoken to it like this before. Salikt tali yasetai. Don't force me to repeat it. Robin said it in the language of the Nahari people this time and looked at the 6 demons with eyes that glowed bright gold. The demon's foot stopped in the air, and what landed on the ground was his knee instead. Then the other 5 demons descended behind him. We hear and we obey, Your Excellency. Your Excellency. The young man was already feeling that he was dreaming of the 6 demons kneeling like this, but he felt like he was hit with a hammer on his head when he heard the last word they said, then looked at the bearded person in front of him, the one whose eyes were shining with gold, and shouted, You! It is you! You are Robin Burton. Didn't you hear His Excellency say that he wants to calm down? Thank him for giving you your life and come with us. The demon saint stood up and grabbed the young man by the back of his neck and began to drag him toward the door. But the young man did not give thanks as the demon told him, but began to shout, Damn you, Robin Burton! You are the reason my parents died. You are the reason for everything that is wrong with this world. You are the devil. You're the dev. And it wasn't enough until one of the demons hit him on the head that he lost consciousness and finally shut up. Then the demons withdrew, dragging the fainted boy behind them, leaving Robin to sit alone in complete silence. Inhale. Exhale. Long inhale. All-seeing God, Big Brother. You can appear now, let's talk. A small ball of light shot out from Robin's head, then quickly changes to form a humanoid body of light. Then the humanoid light spoke in a tone that seemed annoyed. You kept me waiting for too long. Not long enough. Robin looked into the eyes of the all-seeing God's humanoid body and spoke in a harsh tone. The all-seeing God raised an eyebrow when he heard this and began to examine Robin more closely. Even though Robin was trying to control himself as much as possible, his breathing was still out of control. His heart was beating like a war drum, sweat started running down his hair, and his eyes were wide open and fully focused. He looked like someone who was ready to risk everything. Before Robin could say another word, the all-seeing God raised his hand and quickly waved it. Robin tried to speak more than once, but no sound came out. He grabbed his own neck and tried to pump the major heavenly law of life and used the minor heavenly law of sound and other things he thought of, but it was useless. His voice was lost. With nothing he can do, He looked at the all-seeing God with an even angrier stare than the previous one. I don't know what is going on with you, but you seemed about to say something you will regret for the rest of your life. That is if you get to live after you say it. I'm not your daddy and won't tolerate any disrespect. Stay in your boundaries and choose your words carefully. Because I think highly of you, I paid hundreds of years of my cultivation to help you keep your mouth shut until you clear your head. So I advise you to use this time out wisely. The all-seeing God spoke as he was keeping an eye on Robin. Robin opened his mouth to the last of them and cried out with all his might, a cry that if his voice were present would have resounded in the whole city, but not even the fly next to him heard anything. His muffled scream lasted for more than a full minute before he turned his back to lean on the chair again and started panting heavily. Do you feel better now? I'll remove the seal on your voice, but you better think carefully about what you are going to say next and who you are talking to, the humanoid light said, then waved his arm again. Ha! 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 Robin's high panting sound finally became audible again. When Robin could hear himself again, he closed his fist and looked as if he was about to shout something with all his might. But he shut his mouth again, saying nothing. About half a minute later, he just slowly raised his finger and pointed toward the southwest. The humanoid light was puzzled by that gesture, but he followed the path of Robin's finger with his eyes, penetrating walls, mountains, and forests, his eyes extending at the speed of light until they finally reached Jura City. This humanoid light turned his entire body towards that direction when he saw Jura City and began to carefully examine the city with knotted eyebrows, not leaving a person's bone or a grain of sand untouched by his spiritual sense. After he finished examining Jura, he moved his spiritual sense and began to scan the entire continent. After more than 2 minutes, the all-seeing God lowered his head slightly, then turned to face Robin again with his usual facial expression, then spoke. I see. This is unfortunate, but what does any of this have to do with me? Robin hit the stool of his chair and it broke, then shouted loudly. If not for you, I wouldn't have left near my family. It was you who sent me to that filthy planet. I have already gone through hell there, but kept my mission and done my part without saying a word. But now this happened to my home when I was away, and you say, what does any of this have to do with you? Have some shame. The humanoid light kept his gaze fixed on Robin for a few seconds, then placed its hand behind its back and spoke with a blank face. You are too emotional. If you had stayed, you would have died with them. What do you think you are? You are still as weak as a baby even now. What would you have done in a great war that took place more than 10 years ago? Would you have raised your sword and fought? You would have died. You would have invented a miracle to help you win. You know that things don't go like this. Even with the eyes of truth, you can't create these kinds of miracles. What would you have done? Allow them to capture you and leave your family to be enslaved instead of being killed? This is unacceptable. Your life is countless times more valuable than all the members of your family combined, and you know it. Stop behaving like a baby. You authorized the use of your talismans and various inventions too soon. Instead of strengthening yourself and your forces first, you went and attacked a kingdom recklessly and announced your abilities to everyone. Then you were dragged into war after war, and you announced innovation behind innovation. What did you expect? That the strong in your world wait for you to become stronger than them? You make your decisions. Now bear the consequences, and don't blame others like a child. In fact, you should thank me because I saved your life and gave you a chance to take revenge by sending you to Nahari. I have already seen the devastation you did to this continent. It was thousands of times worse than what they did to your Jura City, and I even found 10,000 people with the blood of the Burton family alive and kicking. You took control of the continent and gathered a large number of your family. I see that things are going well, so what is the problem now? Robin clenched his hand until it made a sound as if it was about to be crushed. Then he spoke with blurry eyes. Why didn't you at least tell me what was going on? You should have given me a choice to decide what I should do. You are looking at Jura City and pretending to be surprised? Are you really telling me that you don't know what's going on here? Are you telling me that the all-seeing God never once bothered to see what is happening on his ally planet? Forget about that. Are you telling me that you didn't sense Mila and Richard as they used the space portal to come to Nahari? Didn't it occur to you that I would like to know that my family is being killed? Has it not occurred to you that I might want to know that my wife is being eaten and my son is being tortured? If you didn't know any of that, then what is the use of your damn name?
Yorson.
The humanoid light frowned his eyebrows. Yes, my son. It turns out that Mila was pregnant before I left for Nahari. While Mila died in the most horrible way for a trivial reason, the giants let my son live to work him as a slave. When I saw him, he showed signs of severe torture on every inch of his body, and did not appear like it was torture because he is not obedient or something like that, no. Rather, its traces and locations on his body look like traces of torture for the sake of entertainment. They torture my son. For the sake of entertainment. A suffocated Robin spoke while clenching his hand tightly before raising his head and looking into the all-seeing god's humanoid light eyes. And what surprised you that I have a son? Do you say you didn't know about it? You say you didn't sense him and his mother crossing the borders of this planet and descending on Nahari? Hail, Robin. The all-seeing god sighed and shook his head. I finally understand the reason for your anger. It's a naive mistake that shouldn't have crossed your mind in the first place. And it goes down to this. You considered what I can do, but you didn't ask yourself why I would do it. What do you mean? Robin replied with a frown and looked beside him, trying to hold back his tears after remembering the sight of his son. The humanoid light spoke with his hands behind his back. It's true that I can follow the events anywhere I want and at any time I want. I can technically keep an eye on anyone I want. I can even pay the appropriate price to the host planet and intervene to change the course of events no matter how big it is. You are right about all of that, but the question is, why would I do this? If I should keep an eye on anyone, then it should be you, since you are on a mission that will change the course of my war against my rival. But I didn't have time for that. I don't even know what happened with you since I gave you the coordinates. You know why? Because I'm in the middle of a damn planetary war. Have you forgotten why I asked you to go to planet Nahari in the first place? Why do you think I'd spend my time watching your nascent planet? Why would you think I care to watch over your mortal family? What kind of arrogance made you think that I would pause the battles I'm having with someone as strong as me at the very least and stop the planetary wars my forces are currently engaged in, and then get the popcorn and go watch some insignificant planet you yourself don't exist on? Do you think I'm a babysitter? Have you forgotten who I am? Or worse, you do remember who I am but think you deserve to have me babysit for your kids? Who the hell do you think you are? This. Robin widened his eyes when he heard this. His brain started working very fast trying to find any suitable response, but in the end, nothing came to mind. Right? The person who identified himself as a god would watch over his family all the time. The person who proudly said that he was the ruler of dozens of middle-aged planets would have enough time to keep an eye on Jura City? Robin looked down while still keeping his eyes wide open, as if he was reviewing the tape of his entire thoughts, to see what other reasons he hated the all-seeing God for and wanted to confront him with, and they were many, but when he measured the logic of the all-seeing God against everything in his head, he found that he actually didn't have anything to say. Who the hell do you think you are? The all-seeing God's cold question suddenly becomes the key to everything. Who is Robin to him? Was he a partner? No. Robin has nothing worthy of this stature, no strength, no authority, no talent to stand shoulder to shoulder with the all-seeing God. Even the path of truth that makes him so special is just an old game for the all-seeing God. Thinking of him as his equal is nothing but pipe dreams. Does the all-seeing God owe him anything? On the contrary, the all-seeing God saved his life and he has not completed the task assigned to him yet, which means he still owes the all-seeing God a great debt. Is it a dependency relationship? Nope. From the first day, Robin made it clear to the all-seeing God that he would be independent and that he would return the favor to him later, so there is no close dependency relationship that forces the all-seeing God to take care of him or his family as his followers. And what the all-seeing God did for him does not stop at saving his life by giving him a new body, but since his exit from that cave, the all-seeing God helped him in one way or another, such as accelerating the research into many heavenly laws or researching the innovation of the Foundation modification technology with which he helped Caesar, Mila, and countless of his relatives and associates. The all-seeing God is not obligated to watch his family for him, even if he was the one who sent him to the Nahari planet. This is something that he understands clearly now. But he is still the person because of whom the sequence of events has reached this point. Walking on the line that he draw made Mila die in such a way, but if not for him, he would have never been given the chance to marry Mila in the first place. Ugh! Robin put his head in his hands. It seemed as if he pressed harder he would crush it. But for the first time since Robin heard the all-seeing God's voice, his heartbeat and breathing began to calm down. The all-seeing God remained silent, watching Robin crush his head and writhe in pain. A non-physical pain that almost killed him. What pain? Quite simply, after this short conversation, Robin no longer had someone to blame. All the anger that was squeezing him and was directed at the all-seeing God had now become aimless. The anger is still blazing in his chest, but it was towards whom? All those who participated in the killing of Mila and the psychological and physical torture of his son will be held accountable no matter how small their participation was. There is no disagreement about that. All those who participated in this act from the ancestral continent have already been eliminated, and the arrogant bastards on the Flame Empire continent are now being taken care of, and undoubtedly, the day of the northern Nahari region will come soon enough. But what really makes it worse is, all of them did not mean to harm Mila herself. It was just a side story for the three parties. They did not stop their lives for a moment to think about how to kill her or what happened to her. The kingdoms of the ancestral continent wanted to stop the terrifying advance of the Burton family before they found themselves at their mercy. As for the Flame Empire, they wanted to capture the person who created the incantation and destroy the forces he had gathered to force him to work for them forever. As for what the Nahari giants, Mila was just another human in their eyes, and Richard to them is just a healing machine. Robin was hoping to direct the blame onto someone who knew what he was doing. Someone who intended to kill St. Mila Bradley, Robin Burton's wife and love of his life, and torture Richard Burton, Robin Burton's only biological child. He was looking for someone who could take this animosity personally against him, and the only one who fit that description was the all-seeing God. He is the one that is to blame if he knew what was going on and didn't do anything about it. But after facing him now Robin felt like punching a mirage. Is it possible that what happened to Mila and Richard really was just collateral damage that no one gave two thoughts about? Just collateral damage. The all-seeing God stood in his place all the time watching the changes that occurred in Robin's mood and train of thought, as if he was reading what was going on in his head. About 10 minutes later, a very light, almost imperceptible smile appeared on the all-seeing God's face for a moment, but it disappeared just as quickly. Then he spoke. Now back to my first question, what are you doing here? Why aren't you in Nahari preparing the planet for the incoming invasion? Are you really asking me about this right now? Robin muttered, still holding his head. Why don't I? You can deal with your own problems after I leave. I pay not a small amount of my cultivation for every second I spend here. Now can we focus on my matters for a bit? What is the news there? The all-seeing God spoke in a calm tone. Heh! Robin put his hand on his head and let out a chuckle. Okay. Let's talk then. I already did what you wanted. I built a strong sect and united 20% of the planet and gave them the capabilities to unite the rest of the planet before the invasion started. They know about the invasion and they are preparing for it well. They know it so well that they refused my orders because of it anyways. What happens on Nahari after this point is none of my business. My mission is over. Wait a minute. The all-seeing God raised one of his hands behind his back and shook it. What exactly was your mission? I mean, if you did what you say in just 20 years, then that's really impressive. But why do you say your mission is over? Robin raised his head and yelled. What more do you want? I doubt you could have done half of what I have done there in 20 short years. What? You want me to take up a sword and come down to fight your enemies with my own hands? Those bastards killed my wife in the most horrible ways and are still torturing my son for fun as we speak. If it was up to me, I would have conquered them and destroyed them all before that invasion comes. Do it then. The humanoid light shrugged. Invade that planet and kill them all. Leave no child or elder alive there. Kill the cattle and donkeys. Do you think I care? The important thing is that you take all the energy pearls on the planet for yourself and leave nothing for the invading army. Did we agree that you would strengthen those rabbles? That you will unite the planet? No. Our agreement was to keep the energy pearls out of my opponent's hands, and the way to do that is up to you alone, and you said that you would do everything in your power to achieve it. Only then I would accept the result whether I succeeded or not, and you would have paid your debt to me. Do you say that you can't do anything else to fulfill this mission during the remaining period? Is this how you keep your promises? This? Robin's eyes widened. He turned Nahari upside down and took over almost a quarter of the planet in just 21 years. Even after wasting almost 2 years in his revenge here, wouldn't he be able to do more Nahari in 27 years? If he took the same path, theoretically he could establish an even more powerful sect. But this was not the thing that stopped Robin the most in the all-seeing God's short reply, but rather his words about invading the planet and stealing its resources before the invasion from his rival arrived. This can be applied? Invade planet Nahari? And take over its resources? Robin muttered in a low voice. Robin hadn't thought about this even for a moment since the all-seeing God told him about his mission until this moment. Invading the planet and seizing its resources is not the same thing as invading the northern region in order to save Richard. The degree of difficulty multiplies dozens of times simply when considering the conquest of the planet as a whole. Now he has no longer had to think of a military operation to penetrate the lands of the northern region until he reaches the Azul tribe to bring Richard back, and then quickly returns to the space portal where he can escape, which can be taken down to fighting about 4 northern tribes back and forth, and win. But if he thinks about the mission in this new view, then it has turned into a comprehensive and total destruction of the planet as a whole. To steal all the resources of the planet, he must first destroy all the forces from which he will take those resources. He must completely destroy the 5 regions so that no one is left to ask him what he is doing. In short, he must turn the entire planet Nahari into a copy of the current ancestral continent. And not just that, trying to deplete the resources of a planet tens of times larger than his home planet is something that might take hundreds of years, even if he was collecting everything arbitrarily and in a destructive way. And this means that the invaders will undoubtedly come before he can collect all the energy pearls and the rest precious resources. This means that first he has to destroy all forces in Nahari to a crippling degree, and then he has to defend the planet from invaders with his own army. For the past months, he has been thinking of just a way to get Richard out of the Azul tribe before the invasion begins. The all-seeing God waved when he saw Robin went silent after his muttering. That is your business. If you see that you can't stand the natives there, then destroy them, or send your own army to stop my rival's invasion army. Your one and only mission is to prevent my rival from getting the resources of the planet. If you can't protect these resources, then find a way to burn them completely before they arrive. Your way of choice does not interest me in the slightest. All what I care about is that you continue to accomplish your mission. Do your best to help me, and not sit here to act sad and lazy about it. Robin slowly raised his head and stared into the all-seeing God's eyes with furrowed eyebrow. Why are you looking at me like that? If you don't want to continue with the mission, that's fine. Ignore it and just sit here and grieve for yourself like a little whore. I'll see another way to do what I want. Do you think you are the center of the universe? In the worst case, I'll have to give up some middle-aged planets to my rival for now, but I'll find a way to get them back later. No worries, but remember, everything you have done so far in Nahari and all the losses you have suffered will be in vain, and you'll still owe me your life, and I will be sure to make you pay that debt sooner or later. Robin looked down again and gritted his teeth until he felt them starting to crack. Everything that happened to him on planet Nahari and everything that his family has been exposed to during the last 2 decades will be in vain. If he gave up now, it will be seen as if he did nothing. Even if he ignored all of this and actually withdrew from the mission, who knew if the all-seeing God's next request would be harder or easier? Who knows if the next mission will expose him and what is left of his family to even greater dangers? And the worst, who knows how long the all-seeing God will remain this lenient with him? If drops away now, it would cost him a few middle-aged planets. What if he refused or failed another mission? What guarantees that there will not come a day when the all-seeing God loses hope in him and decides to pay the price and take back the life he gave him? After all, the all-seeing God was someone who literally stopped the laws of the world when he rescued him in the cave that day. Would it be really that hard if he decided to kill him? Hey! Why are you gritting your teeth? Don't you want to repay me your department? After all that I have done for you, the least is to repay me some of my favors upon you. Don't you think that's fair? I even told you that even if you failed, the debt would still be settled as long as you do your best. Who could hope for better terms than these? The all-seeing God spoke in an annoyed tone. Robin was silent and looked down again, supporting his head with both hands, appearing to be thinking really hard about something, which annoyed the all-seeing God even more. He himself showing personally and trying to prove his viewpoint to a mortal wasn't enough. What does this ungrateful kid also want? But Robin was not thinking about whether or not he had to continue his mission on Nahari anymore. He had already made his decision. In fact, the matter was already decided when the all-seeing God proved to him that he had not done what he could yet. And not because he was afraid of the all-seeing God's wrath, not because he wanted to get rid of his department that bad, but even if he was suicidal and didn't care about what happened next, even if he wanted to be killed by the all-seeing God, he would most likely try to finish the task anyway. Otherwise, even in death, he would feel uncomfortable that he broke a promise. Say what you will do until I rearrange my plans. My time here is not open. For every moment I spend here, this nascent planet absorbs a considerable price from my energy. Our lovely conversation here has weakened me enough. The all-seeing God spoke in an annoyed tone. But Robin still did not respond directly. He kept his head on both hands for about another minute, when the all-seeing God had had enough and was about to yell at him when he heard Robin's voice saying, "I will get it done for you, but I need you to give me one more thing. You want me to give one thing, just one, to repel the invasion." The all-seeing God furrowed his brows in disbelief as he looked at Robin, and then said, "Forget about giving you something related to the law of truth or any weapon, heavenly law or any type of technology that far exceeds your current planet's development again. If I lose more of my strength here, then the war will be lost anyway. Don't worry about it, I will get my own laws and make my own weapons. What I want from you is quite a simple request, but it will be enough for more than just stopping the invasion." Robin raised his head and spoke with a cruel smile appearing on his face for the first time in a very long time. 6 months after Robin returned with Jabba and Amon to the city of Jura, on top of a green hill in the north of the ancestral continent. Tisk, instead of sitting in a stately throne room, flaunting the heritage and strength of the ancestral continent in front of those strangers, here we are, sitting like rabbits among the grass and mosquitoes. Billy spoke while swatting a mosquito that was on his forehead. Jabba looked at Billy with half a smile and said, "Put a little energy field around you and the problem will be solved. Stop this drama." It's actually not a very bad spot for a meeting of this importance. I've had enough of seeing the stately halls and sitting behind huge walls. Some peace and quiet in a place like this is 100 times better for me at this point." Caesar let out a long inhale and then asked, "Jabba, are you the one who chose this spot?" "No, I have no hand in this. When I reached out to the master and told him that the war had ended and it was time to meet, he told me to come here." Jabba shook his head. "I agree with the handsome young man. This is refreshing and a bit different. I'm starting to look forward more to seeing this. His Excellency, Robin." An angelic female voice suddenly interrupted the conversation. But no one was bothered. All of them, except for Amon and the rest of the demon kings, looked towards his source with pupils like hearts. The owner of this angelic voice was a woman who seemed to be in her mid-30s. Her body was mature in the full sense of the word and full in the right places. She wore revealing green clothes that fatally showed her chest, and a crown that contained a jewel in the middle that looked like a leaf adorned her head. And at the same time, her beautiful innocent voice and facial features give those who see and hear her the desire to protect her, even though she is undoubtedly one of the strongest, if not the strongest, of everyone present on the hill. This thorny combination of sensuality and innocence combined with her supernatural strengths made her undoubtedly one of the most dangerous individuals on the planet. "Lizzie, can you focus on the situation we are in and act a little serious? We are here because we received a direct order from His Excellency to come within a year, or else he will do to us what he did to the Flame Empire, and we have seen with our own eyes what he did to the Flame Empire. That person gave us a direct threat to destroy our empires. I still don't support our presence here. What is the difference between this and surrender?" Another woman spoke, but this time the voice did not have an iota of charm or innocence, but rather an arrogant tone filled with an icy cold that strikes back upon hearing it. "Secondly, why is the main chair at the table reserved for that person? Since when are we treated as secondary characters?" Suddenly, The general mood shifted from calmness and relative peace to heaviness and gloom again, as everyone looked at the female who just spoke. A woman who appears to be in her late 20s, with a crown shaped like ice crystals on her head, slender in stature. Her hair was white as snow, and she wears a simple white dress, and even her eyelashes are also white as if they were branches of a tree covered by snow falling in winter. Her features are precise and balanced as if they were drawn with a pen. Everything about her looks just perfect. "Hey, don't call me by that name in front of strangers." Lizzie moved her lower lip in annoyance and spoke, furrowing her brows. "Elizabeth, please adjust your tone more. I know you are not taking the current situation seriously, but we need to know who we are dealing with before we go ahead with the decision we made earlier." The man sitting in the middle between the two women spoke, looking at the woman in green. The man appeared to be in his early 40s. He had blonde hair covering his neck and a pointed golden crown, majestic in appearance. His body seemed normal, neither long nor short, neither skinny nor full of muscles, but one could feel a huge and calm power emanating from him. "Hee. I just admire the beautiful nature around us. What's wrong with that? It might be mine soon anyway." Elizabeth gave a captivating chuckle and spoke. When Alexander found her still behaving like this, he smiled lightly and shook his head, then looked at the white-haired woman. "Victoria, you know better than this. We did not come to surrender to anyone. Rather, it is far from this. Do not forget this point even for a moment. As for the main seat, we are now guests of this Robin Burton. It is natural that he acquired the main chair. Just do not focus on such trivial things and let the day go as planned." "Humph." The white-haired woman huffed, then closed her eyes and looked away. The short conversation between the three individuals sent a rain of questions into the hearts and minds of Billy and the rest. Since the three of them appeared on the day of the invasion of the capital of the Flame Empire, and none of Billy and the rest were at ease, the aura of the three of them that was equivalent to that of the late Flame Emperor was enough for everyone to stand ready for another intense battle. Especially since the three of them had shown their willingness to intervene to protect Old Gu and the corpse of the former emperor of the Flame Empire. And they didn't come alone. Every one of the three individuals had around 300 Peak Sage Realm experts with him. That is more than 900 Peak Sage Realm experts. Just once everyone thought that another huge battle would start, Old Gu intervened at the right time and told them to worry about themselves and not intervene with the Flame Empire's personal problems. Then he personally handed over his son's body to Amon and Soccer. He was the one that prevented that day to end with another battle. A huge battle that no one knows what would happen at the end of it. And not just that, Old Gu went even further and spoke with the three individuals to calm them down, honestly answering the three people's questions about what was happening in his lands and the reasons for everything they saw, and urged them not to make a hasty decision, and even went farther and tried to convince them to come to the ancestral continent with him to meet with Robin Burton. Then he left them and spoke to Billy and the rest and told them to treat those three with some respect. They were the three remaining emperors of this world. Wind Emperor Alexander, Water Empress Victoria, Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth. "All right, boys, let's not make this harder than it already is." Old Gu took 2 steps towards the table and then raised both hands and waved gently. The words of the three emperors were between themselves, and they did address anyone else. They were just talking. But for Billy, Caesar, and the rest, almost all of the three emperors' words were threats, pure and direct threats. Especially Jabba and Amon began to sneak their soul sense into their sound rings and send messages to the forces around the hill telling them to prepare to start a battle at any moment. Aside from the three emperors who, if they helped each other, could most likely walk out of the hill alive even if a battle broke out, there were still 900 individuals at the peak of the Sage Realm who came along with them, that is apart from the other 300 generals, elders, and high-ranking officials of the Empire who came in surrendering. This means there are around 1,200 sages that are currently surrounding the Green Hill right now, and all of them are between levels 36-40. The three emperors said that they came to see who Robin is for themselves and decide what they will do next, but their words now and the readiness of the forces coming with them say otherwise. The problem is that the hosts will not accept any mockery. Robin has already declared that he may invade the rest of the empires later, so how come these people threaten them in the heart of their lands? And the thing is, they don't need to hear their threats silently. Even with the presence of the three half-step Emperor Realm Emperors, and the 1,200 high-level sages present, Billy and the rest still have enough confidence that they could eliminate most if a battle broke. On top of the hill, the meeting taking place, and around it are the sages of the four empires, but around them, there are tens of thousands of saint-level demons and a few thousand sage-level ones. Even if the individual strength greatly favored the empire's forces, in an open battle, most of them wouldn't make it out of the hill alive. If things continued like this, then a major battle may break out in an instant. Everything would be decided even before Robin steps foot on the hill. Old Goo could feel that something is building up and looked at Billy in a hurry. Don't focus too much on their words. Please understand that they are, after all, emperors. They are not used to respecting anyone. When His Excellency Robin appears, the serious talk will begin and everyone will know where they stand. His Excellency? Humph. Water Empress Victoria looked at Old Goo with a gaze full of pride. Isn't it enough that you have been standing on your feet as a butler since we came to this disgusting place? But you are also proud to call your enemy with that kind of title? The mighty Flame Empire. TSK, it seems that your defeat was worse than I thought. Even a previous emperor like you lost every iota of self-respect. Old Goo looked at her with a slight smile. Now I am just a prisoner of war. How can I sit down? I have to wait for the verdict to be issued against me. I just realized my status. Secondly, what is the problem if I call him Excellency? If I don't respect him because of the brute force he showed in the war, I will have to respect him for his innovations and for being such a unique person, one that our world has never seen before. Humph, do whatever you want. As for me, I haven't seen anything that makes me respect him, and his strength won't do him any good against the Water Empire. Empress Victoria looked away and spoke. Caesar spoke in a hostile tone. He could not restrain himself any longer from that woman who kept speaking ill of his father. This is strange. His Excellency issued orders that you come to meet him in the ancestral continent within 1 year. And here you are now waiting for him to grace you with his arrival. Do you usually take orders from someone you do not respect? Victoria didn't say a word, but suddenly waved her hand at Caesar in a cutting motion. Alexander, let go of my wrist. Victoria spoke in a voice enveloped in a cold, killing intent. Put your hand down then. Let's hear from that Robin Burton, then do whatever you want. Until I achieve my goal of coming here, I won't let you ruin the meeting. Wind Emperor Alexander spoke with a mischievous face. If he hadn't raised his hand in time to block Water Empress Victoria's attack, Caesar's head would most likely have fallen off his shoulders by now. Do what you want then, what does that have to do with me? This dog disrespected me and deserves to be punished. Water Empress Victoria said again while looking at Caesar with an even more evident killing intent. Punish him if the talks fall, not now, you are not home, you can't do what you want without consequences here. Plus, killing a high executive before a peacemaking meeting isn't very peaceful. Isn't it? Wind Emperor Alexander spoke with a focused gaze while strengthening his grip over the Water Empress's wrist even further. He was not taking no for an answer. And then, I also want to hear what His Excellency had to say. Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth nodded twice. TCH. Water Empress Victoria huffed, pulled her hand in an annoyed manner, and looked away again. Caesar swallowed his saliva, and a few grains of cold sweat began to fall from his forehead. He realized how close he was to death. Even Billy and the rest started to sweat profusely. Everything happened so quickly that most of those present didn't know what had happened until they saw Wind Emperor Alexander grabbing Water Empress Victoria's wrist and started speaking. Jabba, Sokka, and a few other demon kings could see Water Empress Victoria's hand moving, but were unable to react before Wind Emperor Alexander grabbed her hand. If her attack had been completed, they would all have attacked Victoria at the same time. If she had not died from their sudden attack, she would have been severely injured for sure, but Caesar would have been already. After that incident, Wind Emperor Alexander closed his eyes again. Elizabeth returned to looking at nature around her. Victoria returned to looking at the surroundings coldly and hostilely, and Old Goo closed his eyes, placing both hands behind his back and looking at his feet calmly. As for Billy, Jabba, and the rest, they remained seated on their nerves, their soul senses touching their rings, ready to mobilize support and summon their weapons at any moment. No one uttered another word. All that was left of the peace in the air has vanished, leaving nothing but complete stiffness and lingering killing intent. Even the birds and small animals fled from the entire area due to the enormous pressure from all the experts. A deadly silence struck the entire hill and lasted for another hour, until a faint voice came from the direction of the main chair. "Did I keep you waiting? Your Excellency. Father, you are finally here. Tisk, why are you so late, Robin? And why the hell are you looking like that?" As soon as everyone heard the phrase, "Did I keep you waiting?" they all looked towards its source, and there they saw a man with a medium-length beard and his hair falling over his shoulder. His clothes were shabby, and there was some blood all over them. It seemed that he had not changed his clothes or even took a bath for months. By all standards, this person seemed to be a random beggar you might find lying on the sidewalk in any street. Yet Amon, Caesar, Billy, and the rest of the Burton family party knew this person at first sight and stood up to greet him happily. Except for Billy, who didn't seem very happy though. This hilltop gathers world leaders. Literally all this world's leaders. But Robin chose to come dressed like this without even bothering to change his clothes, which would damage their reputation. As for the three emperors, they were not distracted by Billy's concerns, but still looked at Robin with eyes filled with bewildering questions, and even some fear. Their questions about the identity of this person who looked like a beggar quickly disappeared with the shouts of Caesar and the rest. But far more important questions immediately hit their heads like a hammer. How did Robin reach the chair and sit on it without them realizing it? All of them are mighty emperors with thousands of years of training and experience. Each one of them can rule the entire planet by himself, and each one of them can feel an ant's foot strike the ground tens of meters away. But an adult male came from afar and sat 2 meters away from them without them noticing him. Assuming that they were preoccupied with what was to be said in the meeting and their minds were not awake enough to sense what was happening in their surroundings. Although this was impossible, then what about the 1,200 sages who surrounded the hill? Why didn't anyone stop him? Why did no one announce the arrival of a stranger? Were the 1,200 high-level sages who were assigned to guard all busy thinking about the meeting too? Impossible. But this is not what puzzled them the most. Rather, the fact that none of Robin's followers seemed to be surprised at all. They were all happy with his arrival, and Billy was annoyed with his appearance. But no one seemed to question the way he just appeared out of nowhere, as if this was a natural thing and only to be expected from him. How is this even close to normal? How can a person walk as if he were a shadow among people much stronger than him without anyone realizing is normal? What if he had a dagger in his hand now and decided to stab the neck of one of the emperors? Wind Emperor Alexander swallowed his saliva when he thought of this, but quickly pushed the idea out of his head on the pretext that the killing intent and the wind movement around the dagger would reveal Robin's whereabouts. But if such a thing really happened, and Robin did try to attack him, wouldn't he have been in a disadvantageous position from the start of the fight? Did I just feel threatened by a mere level 30 saint level individual? Alexander shook his head slightly, trying to drive this uncomfortable thought out of his mind. But he couldn't help but take another look at Robin, with a light, satisfied smile on his face, sleepy eyes that seemed to contain the whole world inside them, and a faint aura. It is clear that its owner was holding it back as much as he can, but if you try to sense it forcibly, you will find indescribable bloodiness and suffocation. Without a doubt, he is a level 30 saint, which makes him the weakest among those present here by a large margin, much weaker even than Caesar, who is calling him Father. Why do all of them here consider a person weaker and younger than them to be their leader and be at ease with calling him Your Excellency? Is it because of the stealth ability he showed just now? A level 30 saint who is around 200 years old, by the standards of the ancestral continent where a level 31 sage can be considered king and a level 30 saint who could command a dukedom, his cultivation can indeed be considered a great achievement. But by the standards of the four empires, there is nothing special about him. His cultivation at this age is indeed very good and makes Robin a genius, but there are people who reach this cultivation level much faster than him. Wind Emperor Alexander, for example, reached the pinnacle of sainthood realm at the age of only 95. So nothing makes him special from this point alone. Then Alexander looked out of the corner of his eye at the Water Empress Victoria, the icy woman who looks at everything under the sky with arrogance and disdain. but he found her looking at Robin with open and shaking eyes. Even the sacred tree Emperor Elizabeth, who underestimates everything and always act playful, was looking at Robin with slightly knotted eyebrows, and a small drop sweat dripped from her forehead. It was clear that they were thinking about what he was thinking. The Wind Emperor turned his eyes on Robin again. "Never mind, Billy. I don't think the gentleman here would mind my appearance." Robin's smile widened slightly in response to Billy's criticism. Then he passed his eyes over the three emperors. "Isn't it right, gentlemen? I don't mind myself." Sacred Tree Emperor Elizabeth spoke in her usual charming voice. Then Alexander and Victoria nodded. But in the middle of the gesture, Wind Emperor Alexander and Water Empress Victoria froze. Why would they respond to their potential enemy and make him feel better about his bagger appearance? It was then that the three emperors realized something. The two sides hadn't exchanged any important words yet. Neither a word of threat nor a surrender had been said. But they knew that Robin had already taken the initiative. "And why don't you sit down with them?" Robin looked at one of the sages standing around the table and asked. "Me?" Old Goo was very surprised by the question. As there were many other sages scattered around the table, why did Robin single him out for the question even though he had never seen him before? He was absolutely sure that nothing of his aura was leaking out. But he quickly suppressed his initial surprise and replied, "How could this old man sit in such an important meeting? I'm just here to receive orders and do as commanded." If you don't deserve to sit here, then none of those three do either." Robin let out a sneering laugh and spoke, then looked beside him. "Billy, who is this person?" Billy looked at the old man and spoke bluntly. "It is Goo Barnett, the emperor of the previous generation of the Flame Empire. He participated in the killing of his own son, Flame Emperor Elias Barnett, who happens to be the #1 criminal in the incident of the invasion of the Ancestor Continent. He also controlled the elders and generals and all joints of the empire completely and eliminated any possible resistance toward us there after the battle. And he also put the empire's army in a state of idleness. Although his surrender came far too late, his active participation in the war contributed greatly to ending the war faster and with fewer losses. You would have annihilated any resistance, whether I intervened or not. I am nothing but a defeated old man. I did what I had to do to save some additional lives." Old Goo shook his head and replied, "Oh." Robin raised his eyebrows when he heard Billy's words. His expectation is that all the powerhouses of the Flame Emperor continent have been killed and the demons are still trying to suppress the revolts now, but there are still elders and generals. There is still an army, and even the previous generation emperor. "I know what you're thinking about, and you don't need to worry about it. I know you ordered the destruction of the army and all the powerhouses in the Flame Empire, but everything is stable there and there are 5,000 demon sages with tens of thousands of saints and knights roaming the continent, so there is no fear of it getting out of our control anytime soon. As I have brought you Old Goo and all the important elders and sages of the continent, you can do whatever you want with them, and if you don't like it, just give the order and our guys there will take care of the rest." Robin returned to look at Old Goo for a long time, then spoke, "Give me your hand." "Ha! All right." Old Goo took a few steps and slowly extended his hand toward Robin. Robin on the other end took the old man's hand and then closed his eyes and said, "Get rid of any spiritual defense. Don't try to resist no matter what, and don't try to withdraw your hand. If I feel any amount of resistance or malicious reaction, I will directly destroy your soul. I hope I was clear enough." Water Empress Victoria gave a short laugh but said nothing. Yes. Old Goo didn't understand what Robin was trying to do, and if this man can destroy his soul at all. But he still made a short, adequate reply, after which he kept his eyes on Robin, watching his facial expressions. But suddenly, Water Empress Victoria furrowed her eyebrows when she saw this and looked out of the corner of her eyes at Alexander, who looked confused and apprehensive as well. What would cause pain to someone with Old Goo's strength? He was an expert as strong as them and had experience, resistance, and soul power that surpassed them all. Secondly, did Robin just say, "If you feel any resistance or malicious attempt, I will destroy your soul"? Does this boy understand what it means to destroy Old Goo's soul? When they heard him make this statement, they sneered at the audacity of this top-level saint. But hearing those heart-rending screams, It didn't seem like he was joking. Old Goo's scream continued for about 2 minutes. The pain reached him that he could no longer bear to stand, and fell to his knees in front of Robin. He felt that his soul was about to be torn apart at any moment, but he did not dare to withdraw his hand. He didn't want his soul to be destroyed. Robin finally released his hand. Sweat was pouring down his entire body profusely. It was obvious that he had spent quite a bit of his energy on whatever had just happened. When Old Goo realized that his hand was now free, he quickly pulled it and put it around his head. A severe headache nearly killed him, but his whole body seemed to be damaged and no longer knew how to function efficiently. Antoine Barnett, Joseph Barnett, Maria Barnett. Robin let out a long exhale and then, with one breath, began calling names out loud until he got to the 17 names. Robertson Barnett. All of these must be executed and their family property shall be seized. Orders are to be carried out immediately. What? No. What are you talking about? We have given up already. Is this how you treat your prisoners? This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. One of the elders whose name was mentioned panicked and began to mumble, but he had barely finished the sentence before he found Soccer's hand piercing his chest. Antoine! Another shouted when he saw the scene. We have to get out of here. What are you all waiting for? They are killing us, your brothers. Under your noses. You will stand there and allow them. Fight with us. One of those sentenced to death tried to move the rest of the generals and elders on his side. But no one moved. Rather, some of those sentenced to death did not move from their place. They just sighed and closed their eyes. Everyone here accepted the possibility of death since they agreed to surrender. Billy made this clear as the sun even before the battle was over. The hundreds of sages of the Flame Empire came here not to participate in some fair trial, but to die in front of Robin to satisfy his vengeance and make him forget about their families. In fact, having only 17 names on the list is a pretty good outcome. It's just that facing actual death made the survival instinct kick in. That person who shouted and some of the names on the list tried to escape, but the Demon Kings and Jabba pursued them everywhere. Some of the sages from the other 3 empires were about to move to help those people, but the 3 emperors raised their hands and ordered them to retreat, and quickly the cries of the 17 sages began to rise one after another. The silence on the hill has finally been broken. Damn you, Goo! You brought us here to be slaughtered. Ha! Ha! Ah! Old Goo completely ignored the screams and pleas. He was in agonizing pain. Even after Robin let his hand go for over a minute, his body was still shaking as lost control of all the joints of his body and felt that his soul was about to collapse at any moment. But that didn't stop him from raising his head and looking at Robin as if he was seeing a monster. Those names he just called out, those people who had been sentenced to death. Most of those who backed the late Flame Emperor in all his decisions have already died in the siege around the Flame Empire capital, or in the ancestral continent, but there were a few who managed to hide well among Old Goo and his party when the city fell. Those 17. Some of them physically participated in the invasion against Jura, some of them supported the war with their money and authority, and some of them even had nothing to do with the ancestral continent war. But they were bribed criminals and traitors that were widely known for their corruption in the Flame Empire. Every single one of them deserves the death penalty without a doubt. But how? How did Robin call them out by name? Information about some of the people among them was highly confidential and was known only to the Emperor and his advisors. His parents. A thought came to Old Goo's head that struck him like lightning. He looked at his trembling hands, then raised his head again to look at Robin. No, this can't be, right? What he received in return was Robin's slight smile as he looked back at him and said, Now that we have got rid of those who should be eliminated, one step ahead of the rest of you. Ha! Ha! Who? Old Goo tried to quickly control his breathing, then stood up and looked at Robin with his 2 broken eyes. What do you want us to do? Dozens of metal plates appeared next to Reuben out of nowhere, attracting the eyes of all the sages, especially the 3 emperors, who watched everything in extreme shock, but tried to hold back their urge to ask about what had just happened so as to maintain a strong appearance. As for Robin, he waited until the last tablet went down, and then spoke. Well, the next part is very simple. Each one of the gentlemen here will take hold of these tablets, pass your spiritual sense through them, and then swear eternal obedience to me, Robin Burton, and to my offspring after me, You will do as commanded without thought or reason. And swear to teach your family the same and plant allegiance towards me in their hearts, and to curb any attempt at rebellion that may harm anything or anyone related to me, and that none of you give up any high position before he compels the person who will succeed him to take the same oath. Of course, I do not need to mention that the punishment for disobedience or any negligence in any part of the oath will be death. But the good thing is that after that you will be part of my close followers, and I will treat you as I treat them, and your families will be under my protection as they are under your protection. Simple, right? The survivors of the Flame Empire swallowed their salvia when they heard this. All of them without exception had heard about the innovations and strange things that their army had found on the ancestral continent, and of course they knew what the oath tablets were. They had tens of thousands of prisoners but couldn't get a single information from them because of these oath tablets. Old Gulong looked at the metal plates. He didn't even dare to give an answer. This oath was too insulting. And what happens if we refuse? Hee. A sarcastic laugh escaped from Robin's mouth. Then he straightened up and looked into Old Gu's eyes seriously. Let's make something clear here. At first I decided to exterminate every one of you. Even your dogs and donkeys were going to be food for the demons. Then I showed you some mercy that I gave orders to destroy your army and kill all your experts only and spare the innocent. I came today and I think that orders have already been carried out. But it seems that my friend Billy here has another opinion. The mercy that I showed was not enough in his eyes. So he ignored my orders again and left the Flame Empire nearly as it was, bringing me hundreds of supposedly dead high-leveled sages. But now you are saying that you lot might refuse to say a few words. Bailey quickly stood up and spoke when he found Robin talking about disobeying his orders. Robin, I didn't mean to disobey your orders, but it was Old Gu's intervention that... Enough. What's done is done. And depends on them. Maybe it's not that bad either. Robin raised his hand to silence Bailey and then continued, still looking into Old Gu's eyes. I have come and am ready to hear that my orders have been fulfilled and that the Flame Continent had become a farm where only the mortals resided. But seeing you here made me think of an alternative. You have only two options: either you preserve your heritage and rule over your lands by being a force that is entirely subject to me alone, or I complete the implementation of my previous orders and wipe everything related to the Flame Empire from the back of the world. It is either this or that. Choose wisely. Old Gu looked down and clenched his hands tightly. Are you really going to accept all the people of Flame Empire as your followers because they will swear while holding a metal plate? Is that some kind of flexing a muscle, or is it about showing that you are being merciful in front of us? Humph. How ridiculous! Water Empress Victoria chuckled when she heard this, happy that she had finally found something she could use to belittle Robin before they started negotiating. It is natural after occupying any region to destroy its fangs and claws. How can you feel at ease in your lands when there are strong individuals who can bite you in the back when you turn around? And as long as Robin succeeded in occupying the Flame Empire continent, now is the time to trim nails and break fangs. The first thing a conqueror would do is kill everyone at the level of knighthood or higher, just as Robin did when he gave the orders to attack the ancestral continent. This might be very extreme due to the number of people the decision was applied to, but it is normal in a war. The 8 kingdoms declared war against him, and the loser has to endure the consequences. It's that simple. This is, for example, what happened in the noble Camden family in the past, where all the powerhouses were killed and the rest turned into slaves. And this is also what the Flame Empire did with the families of Rufus, Bradley, and other families affiliated with Robin. None of their powerhouses were left alive except for members of the Special Forces and the Runemasters, as they were imprisoned in order to conduct tests on them. So killing all the sages who came from the Flame Empire, including Old Gu, in exchange for pardoning their offspring and only turning them into slaves is just right. Throwing them in prison for the rest of their lives is a very light sentence. But converting them into close followers by just reciting an oath on an ordinary plate of metal. They know what I'm talking about. Robin chuckled while still fixing his eyes on Old Gu. Ha! What's your decision, old man? Just agree and say them. They are just some words. You will expose him as the hypocrite he is after you say these words. Empress Victoria spoke again. Just shut the hell up if you don't know what are you talking about. Old Gu spoke with difficulty as he gritted his teeth, then looked behind him at the rest of the sages of the Flame Empire. You! Empress Victoria was annoyed by his reaction and was about to say something, but she felt the hand of the sacred tree Empress Elizabeth touching her arm. Then she pointed with her eyebrows towards a certain direction. Water Empress Victoria was distracted for a moment, but she finally looked in that direction, towards the hundreds of sages of Flame Empire. Her eyes opened on the last of them, and she understood Elizabeth's point. Something strange is happening. There was not a single sage of the Flame Empire taking it lightly, not a single one of them who seemed relieved to have escaped death. All of them clenched their fists, grit their teeth, and sweat. Just by looking you can tell that their brains are working with all their capacity to make a fateful decision. The oath is really harsh, humiliating, will last for eternity, and almost impossible to achieve. But that is if it is implemented at all. Why are these people acting so seriously? Aren't they just words to make them feel submissive? Is it possible that they're actually thinking of keeping everything they are going to say? Old Gu finally raised his head and spoke. Sai, looks like the Flame Empire is going to enter a whole new era. Do you want us to be informal slaves forever or cease to exist? It's okay. I'll choose to be a slave and give the new generations a chance to lead a good life. If I had to be a slave doing so, then be it. All I can say is that I hope this era is not much worse than the previous one. I agree. I will swear by what you want. I agree too. And I'm also. And me. After every one of the remaining sages of the Flame Empire agreed to the terms, Robin wasted no more time. With a light smile and a wave of his hand, the tablets began to lightly fly towards those sages. But the sages of the Flame Empire weren't quite as excited. Agreeing to swear an oath in order to save their lives was one thing, but holding the board and being ready to really say it out loud was another thing entirely. Within a few months, the Flame Empire turned from prestige, power, and absolute authority and respect to a situation where they had to choose between humiliation and eternal slavery, or death. Each one of them held the metal plate firmly in his hand as if he wanted to break it. They knew that there was no escape from saying the oath other than death, but not one of them dared to say a single word. At that moment, Water Empress Victoria spoke out. All of you, you are not forced to do this. We children of empires should not accept this treatment. And is there another solution, Your Majesty? One of the sages spoke while shaking his head. Wait until we finish the meeting, and then decide whether you will stand up to fight or say those humiliating words. We are still here for you. Just seek protection from me, and let me see who approaches you. Water Empress Victoria raised her head and shouted. Robin raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw this and started moving the fingers of his right hand that was placed on the table. It seemed as if he was preparing to give orders to attack at any moment. Even Jabba and Amon, and the rest started to make light movements such as taking a step forward or passing their spiritual sense inside the space rings in their hands. There was no way Robin would allow the sages of the Flame Empire to take refuge behind one of the other empires even for a second. If this were to happen, it would simply have been as if his words had no weight and that Victoria's protection was more important to them than Robin's judgment. If they started negotiating with that mentality, then what's the point of the negotiations at all? If the sages of the Flame Empire accepted this offer, they would be killed, and any emperor who agrees to protect them would be attacked immediately. It was as simple as that. The eyes of the three emperors were not fixed for one moment, going back and forth between the Robin and Flame Empire sages, trying to analyze the situation and predict what would happen shortly. Even Victoria started sweating a little bit. No talks had started yet, but everyone was ready for another massacre that might start at any moment. Wind Emperor Alexander had wanted with all his heart to slap that woman on the mouth. So what did they have to do with what happened to the Flame Empire? Aren't they the ones who put themselves and put them in this situation? But during that terrible silence, Old Gu's voice was heard. I swear to follow His Excellency Robin Burton's orders and to do everything in my power to compel all who have actual power over the citizens of an empire to take a similar oath. And if I intentionally failed to implement any clause, then I deserve death. I swear to follow the orders of His Excellency Robin Burton and I swear to follow orders. Old Gu straightforwardly began to recite his oath, taking everyone by surprise, especially the sages of Flame Empire who looked at the emperor who had ruled over them for thousands of years saying such insulting words as if they were nothing. But this also brought them back to their senses. If the Flame Emperor could bear such an insult, then what would stop them? So they clenched their hands, passed their spirit sense into the metal plates, and then began reciting their allegiance as well. Good, very good. Robin's light smile increased slightly and he clapped twice, then pointed towards one of the empty chairs on the table near him as he looked at Old Gu. You are one of us now, come sit down. Thank you, Your Excellency. Old Gu nodded and then went to sit where Robin pointed out. Humph. Water Empress Victoria puffed and spoke disgustedly. Even after I offered to protect you all, you still chose to humiliate yourself. It seems you were looking for a way to be a slave. Perhaps you should have considered enslaving yourself to me before the man who ripped your land apart. Sigh, you remind me of my son a lot, but we all know where he is now. Old Gu spoke and shook his head as he sat on his chair. Humph. It is you that who let old age eat your head. The Water Empress Victoria slammed on the table. You think saying a few words will make this person trust you? Do you think you and the rest of your sages won't be secretly assassinated one by one after getting out of here? What a joke. He just wants to satisfy his ego by humiliating you in front of him. Hee hee. If you don't know what these tablets are, then please stop talking. You are embarrassing yourself. Old Gu let out a mocking laugh and spoke. You! Water Emperor Victoria shouted and was about to say something, but she felt a hand poke her from the side. When she looked next to her, she saw the Sacred Tree Emperor Elizabeth looking towards Old Gu, speaking in her musical voice. Why don't you broaden our horizons and tell us what those metal tablets are then, Uncle Gu? If the person concerned wants to tell you, let him tell you, and if he wants me to tell you, ask him to give me permission first. I'm nothing but a man carrying out orders to the best I can now. Stop talking to me. Old Gu replied with hearable sadness in his voice. No matter what, his lifelong self-respect has been broken. But still, he looked up at Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth and added, but as an old man, I advise you to don't think about those tablets for now and get to the point with the main guy. If the conversation goes well and you are smart enough, perhaps you will hold on to one of those metal tablets too and find out on your own. Everyone knew who is the main guy that Old Gu spoke about, and once again all eyes were focused on Robin. Some of them confused looks, some of them held hatred, some of them held many questions, and some of them even reverence, but they all have one thing in common. Respect. Wind Emperor Alexander put both his hands on the table and spoke as he looked at Robin. Yes, Uncle Gu is right. I think it's time for us to take the invitee's opinion on a few matters. I'm all ears. Robin smiled and gave a short reply. Why did you invite us to come here? Wind Emperor Alexander spoke directly. For the same reason you accepted the invitation, to get to know and understand each other. Robin replied with a slight smile on his face. Wind Emperor Alexander furrowed his brows. So kidnapping our sons for months and then threatening to destroy our empires if we didn't come, was that an invitation to get to understand each other? Forgive me, but that doesn't seem a little bit respectful. There were other options, you know? And you bringing 900 sages between levels 38-40 here, although I invited you alone, and trying to interfere in my war against the Flame Empire was a respectful act to do? Is your offer to shelter enemies of mine here in the heart of my lands can be considered peaceful? That woman attacking my adopted son was considered respectful. Let's say we both have different tastes in introducing ourselves and finish talking about the matter at this point. Robin shrugged and spoke. Humph. It is a pity that the attack was not completed. Victoria spoke angrily when she heard Robin say, that woman, you have to thank heaven first and then the Wind Emperor that your attack was not delivered. If something happened to Caesar, I wouldn't be content with only killing you. Your entire empire would have paid the price. I would have left them feeling envious of the way I left the Flame Empire. A latent killing intent leaked out from Robin as he looked at Victoria, since he saw in Old Gu's memories what had happened before he arrived. He was trying to restrain himself as much as possible with her around. You're overestimating yourself. Come and try. Victoria smiled provocatively and replied. All right, there is no need to try anything. I think Mr. Robin is right. Everyone has their own way of doing things. Wind Emperor Alexander gave half a laugh and then pointed at himself. Let me start. I am the ruler of the Wind Empire of this generation, Alexander Levon. and this is the ruler of the continent of the Sacred Tree Empire, Elizabeth Trent. And this one is the ruler of the continent of the Water Empire, Victoria Frost. As Wind Emperor Alexander introduced the two women next to him, there was a slight golden gleam in Robin's eyes as he looked at the three of them. Wind Emperor Alexander looked at Robin with confidence and respect while introducing himself. He did not show any arrogance, but he did not show any weakness either. As for Sacred Tree Empress, Elizabeth smiled and made a light gesture that captured the hearts of everyone present, while Victoria did not even look at Robin's direction. But Robin paid no attention to it. He waited as soon as the Wind Emperor finished, then nodded with a smile. Nice to have you all here. Now let me introduce myself. I'm Robin Burton, researcher and inventor, nothing big, I just come up with a few fun toys every once in a while. I also happen to be the ruler of the Ancestral Continent, the Flame Continent, and the Central Continent. What did you say? Victoria, who was looking towards the horizon, shouted when she heard Robin's words. What Central Continent? Do you realize what you are saying? I know exactly what I'm saying. The Central Continent has become mine, and this is a decision that is effective from this moment on. You! Water Empire Victoria hit the table. I knew it was useless to come here. I told you there was no alternative to war. Wind Emperor Alexander reached out his hand, grabbed Victoria's wrist, and nodded towards her, then turned his gaze back towards Robin. Mr. Robin, you seem like a reasonable person, so let's not talk with emotions now. We can understand that you want to run the affairs of the Ancestral Continent on everyone's behalf and want a part of the territory of the Flame Continent, and this is understandable since it was you who ended the rule of the Barnett family there. But the Central Continent? That is not going to happen, and if you insist, I'm afraid it would be a big problem. Managing the Ancestral Continent on everyone's behalf? Taking a part of the territory of the Flame Continent? Oh no. Are you saying that you had hopes that I would share the two continents with you? Hey, you really have lived in your ivory palace too long. Robin laughed loudly, but then his smile disappeared as he spoke seriously. The Ancestral Continent is mine, and the Flame Continent is also one of my private possessions now, not managing them on anybody's behalf or taking a part of them. They belong to me completely and categorically, and this matter is undiscussable. I do not even know why we are talking about this in the first place. What is this? Instead of trying to persuade me not to include your continents in my possessions, you came wanting a part of what is already mine. What audacity! Who allowed you to think this way? Take our continents? Do you think we will be easy prey? Do you think you are going to hunt us down one after the other as you did with the Flame Empire? Do you think you can invade us when we are united? This meeting is useless. We should have done as he said and brought our armies with us. Wait, Victoria. Please be patient, Mr. Robin does not mean that he will invade our lands. Sacred Tree Emperor spoke in a somewhat serious tone, then looked towards Robin with a very sweet smile. Mr. Robin, let's leave the issue of the Ancestral Continent and Flame Continent to the side. For now, it is true that the Central Continent doesn't belong to anyone in particular, but it belongs to everyone. Declaring it as your private property is the same as taking our share of the land. Secondly, that continent has always been the beating heart of the world, where its people meet and get to know the different heritage of the other empires in a neutral place. This contributed greatly to strengthening the ties between the four empires over tens of thousands of years and contributed to the stability of world peace. Forcing a group of people to stay on their own continent forever will result in an aspiration to see what lies beyond the seas, which will result in thinking of expansion and conquest, and thus will inevitably generate wars sooner or later. The existence of the Central Continent has the solution to this matter. I hope you reconsider your declaration to avoid unnecessary world wars. You don't have to think about this point. Your citizens will be able to move freely everywhere in the world, and not just the Central Continent. Are you happy now? Robin smiled lightly and spoke. Oh? How is that? We can't have strangers coming into our lands freely as they might be coming with ill intentions, and we also can't feel safe for our sons going into some faraway hostile territory. Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth raised her eyebrows and asked. Robin's smile widened and he replied, Don't worry about both. There will be no hostile territories. There will be no need for anyone to spy or harm another, as by the end of this day the entire planet will be mine. Finally, he showed his true colors. Didn't I tell you? By coming here on his order, he will think we are weak. That is it for me. If you both don't leave right now, I will. Water Empress Victoria stood up and then pointed at Robin. You there. You say the planet will be yours? Come and take my continent if you can. Sigh, looks like we really wasted our time. Let's go. Wind Emperor Alexander slowly stood up as well. His disappointment was evident in his words and facial expressions as he said it. I had better expectations for this. What a loss. Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth sighed and slowly started to stand up as well. None of them knew how to react when news reached them that their subjects had been held captive for months at the mercy of some crimson-colored demons, and that the leader of those crimson-colored demons was actually a human, and that he ordered for the three emperors to come and meet him on the ancestral continent within 1 year, or else what happened to the Flame Empire would happen to them. The matter was very sudden and very, very strange. Their minds could not absorb all that information at one time, and none of them could answer the question. How did a force of this size appear in the ancestral continent? Or, what are those demons? All that occupied their heads was, what the hell happened to Flame Empire? The three emperors quickly used their primitive means of communication and tried to reach out to the Barnett family in the Flame continent to find out what was going on. But to no response. The war was already raging there, and the demons were surrounding the entire continent, killing anything or anyone that tries to enter and leave the continent. So they communicated with each other and decided to go to the Flame Empire themselves to find out what was going on. And there they got the shock of their lives. When they reached the shore and saw the mutilated corpses, their hearts were gripped, and the deeper they went into the continent, the feeling of suffocation became more apparent. That continued until they reached the Flame Empire capital and saw from afar the capital burning. They saw a huge number of the crimson demons they heard about. But hearing about something was way different than seeing it, and seeing these creatures eating the corpses of their victims was, they couldn't even find words to describe it. Can only be said that these scenes will forever be engraved in their memories. And soon enough they saw Flame Emperor Elias, advancing bravely to defend his land, and then saw his father, Old Gu, attack him verbally and then participate in what appeared killing him. Sacred Tree Empire Elizabeth tried to step forward more than once to help the Flame Empire, but Victoria and Alexander stopped her. Even the sages of Sacred Tree Empire begged her to stop. Who would want to get involved in something like that? If hell exists, this was it. The scene was terrifying. Just the fact a father had to attack his own son to stop this madness was evident enough. Only when the battle came to an end and they saw how Old Gu was forced to kill his own son did they all know the significance of that demon's leader's threat. They knew what he meant with, just like what happened in the Flame Empire, really meant. That guy could foresee what is going on right now since months ago. He had absolute confidence that he would turn an ancient kingdom into hell even before the war began. And the thing is, that guy wasn't ever there. Did he think that destroying one of the 4 empires wasn't worth his time? Quickly, the 3 of them agreed to unite and stand together against this new common enemy. And if one of them got attacked, the other 2 empires have to help. And they also agreed to accept the invitation and go to the ancestral continent to meet with this mysterious guy in the hope that they might stop the war before it happened. Hoping that what they are seeing now was a personal feud against the Flame Empire, and that he was only inviting them in this manner to demonstrate his power, telling themselves that if that person only wanted war, he would not have invited them to meet, even if it was a somewhat rude invitation. They also agreed to threaten him somehow by their unity and negotiating with him over the ownership of the ancestral continent and the Flame continent. Then they would give up on them in the end as if it was a peace offer, hoping that they achieve peace with him this way, hoping that he might forget about their lands and leave them alone. But from Robin's words now it became clear that he doesn't put them in his eye. The subject about the ancestral continent and the Flame continent was closed before it was even opened. It was obvious that Robin didn't bring them here to flex his muscles, but wanted to accept their surrender. And if they were going to lose their lands and heritage anyway, then naturally they will bet on war. Why does it seem that you think you can leave as you please? Jabba took out the war hammer from his space ring and placed it on his shoulder. Amon, Sokka, and the other demon kings standing behind Robin also assumed attack stances and inserted their spiritual sense into the sound rings. ready to give orders to the demon army to pounce on the hill at any moment. The sages from the three empires who were spread around the hill felt the energy disturbances occurring above as well, and their faces turned for the worse. When they left their lands with their emperors, they were surprised by their decision and wondered what might necessitate their personal action. And indeed many of them objected to cutting off their work to accompany their emperors on some journey outside the continent. But now that they are in the midst of a sea of demons, they feel that they are nothing. With all their strength that they were so proud of, they would all be killed if a fight broke out now. Is that how you treat your guests, Mr. Robin? Alexander looked around in fear, then quickly fixed his eye on Robin. Caesar took 2 paces behind Reuben and shouted, "And do the guests come with 1,000 individuals at the top of the sage realm? If the fortunes were turned and we didn't have enough troops today, would you have let us go if we disagreed?" Snow began to form around the top of the hill, and Water Empress Victoria's eyes turned completely white as she looked at Caesar with clear killing intent. "You again? You really deserve to die." Caesar took out a broad divine sword from his space ring with black flames ignited on it, fully unleashing his aura as a level 32 sage, drawing all eyes towards him. Then he shouted, "Then come and try me, bitch! Step back. Who gave you the orders to move? It was who invited them here, and I am responsible for their safety until they leave my land. Do you all think I would break a promise? Never." Robin suddenly stood up and shouted angrily. The demon kings started to look at each other strangely, and then gave up their offensive stance. Caesar also lowered the sword, but he didn't shut his mouth like the rest, so he looked towards Robin and spoke. "Can't you give up these ideals of yours just this once? If we let them out, they will go to prepare armies against us. If we kill them now, all 4 empires will fall in succession like leaves. By killing them, we can save numerous lives." Water Empress Victoria could not remain silent after hearing those words and said, "Humph! And you wretch is the one who is going to kill us? Say it again." Caesar raised his sword again and spoke aggressively. "I said enough." Robin shouted again at Caesar. "This was just a friendly exchange of opinions, and they are here under my protection. If they choose war, it is up to them." Tisk! This time Caesar drew his sword into his space ring and retreated to its original position without adding another word. Wind Emperor Alexander let out a long sigh, then took 2 steps forward and poked Water Empress Victoria to undo what she was doing, then looked towards Robin. "Mr. Robin, my respect for you has greatly increased, but I think there is something wrong with it. We are not the ones who declared war. It was you." "Me? When did that happen?" Robin returned to his seat and a simple smile returned to his lips. "Actually, I have a matter that requires the largest possible number of troops, so I do not want to start a war unless absolutely necessary. But if you want it, then there is no escape. We don't want anything. We can do without any connection to the ancestral continent. I can even convince Elizabeth and Victoria to forget about the Flame Continent as well. They are all yours. Just leave everything else as it is, and then there will be no need for wars, and we will live together in peace. It's that simple." Wind Emperor Alexander took another step forward and spoke excitedly, finally finding a glimmer of hope. "Sorry, that's not possible. I went through a lot until I learned that 2 tigers cannot exist on the same mountain. True peace can only be achieved if there is only one ruler, and that will be me. No matter how many years it will take me to achieve this and how many souls will die until the planet unites, this will happen. And please make sure that this is me speaking about a future reality and not a threat." Robin shook his head and spoke. Wind Emperor Alexander almost cracked his fist from pressure on it. He could feel absolute confidence in Robin's words, and looking at the demon army he saw with his own eyes, he was truly capable of saying such words. Water Empress Victoria was about to say something, but Robin suddenly interrupted her. "It is true that I will be the sole ruler of the planet, and that is beyond doubt. But as I said, I care about how this happens and I do not want war. On the contrary, I want you as allies. So I have a few offers you may like. I hope you will delay your departure and hear it till the end." The Wind Emperor slightly furrowed his brows. "What good these offers would do when you are the sole ruler? You want us to hand over our lands that our ancestors nurtured for tens of thousands of years to you and go out to graze the sheep? We give you all the resources of the continent that we now possess without restrictions in return for offers. Are you convinced of what you say? Haha, no, you will not hand over anything. If everything goes well, each of you will remain the ruler of his continent, your families will remain a ruling family, and your systems and everything will remain as it is. This is what will happen with the Barnett family even after our bitter war with them. And as for your resources, I do not want them. I don't need anything from whatever resources you have, so do not worry about this. If I needed anything from your lands, I will buy them like any ordinary customer. The only thing that will change if you agree is that you will take a small oath to swear allegiance and obedience to me. We swear to you on what? You are dreaming, Water Empress Victoria exclaimed when she heard this. But the Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth interrupted Robin before he could reply and spoke. If everything will remain under our rule, and you don't need our resources, what can our loyalty benefit you? Why do you stress on this matter? What exactly will you command us to do if you don't need anything from us? Robin nodded his head after hearing Elizabeth. I can't think of anything specific, I just want to make sure the inner peace within the planet will last forever. If you all answer to the same person, then there will be nothing to worry about. I won't have another potential stab in the back. Other than that, I don't really need you for anything. I guess the only thing I have commanded you to do is to defend the planet in case of an outside invasion. To defend the planet against an external invasion? There are other worlds. Wind Emperor Alexander slightly furrowed his eyebrows upon hearing this. Even Water Empress Victoria looked startled. What is very surprising? Don't you see the demons? Did you think we were at a fancy dress party? Robin said, then laughed out loud. All the anticipation and nervous tension that had gripped Wind Emperor Alexander's hurt turned in an instant to shock upon hearing Robin's words. Water Empress Victoria and Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth glanced at each other with eyes full of questioning and suspicion as well. What? Is it so hard to believe that there are other planets around? Robin raised his eyebrows and asked when he saw the three of them acting this way. The Wind Emperor shook his head upon hearing Robin's question and replied, I don't know, but since we've known nothing about this for tens of thousands of years of our documented history, I doubt we'll need to deal with other worlds anytime soon. Asking for our full allegiance to you in order to fend off an invasion of some aliens we never heard about from worlds we do not know exist. Excuse me, but this is a stupid way to scare us into submission. Maybe try another excuse. Ha 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 ha. What do you mean, this is the first time you hear about aliens from other worlds? Who is standing in front of you now? Do you think I found them in some local circus? Robin laughed out loud and pointed toward Jabba and Amon. This? Wind Emperor Alexander stared at Amon and Jabba for a few seconds. The Water and Sacred Tree Emperors also looked towards the Demon Kings with mixed feelings. Even though they had seen Jabba and the demons all the time over the past few weeks, it seemed like it was the first time to see them. There is no doubt that the forms and powers of Jabba and the demons were unfamiliar, but it did not cross their minds even for a moment that they came from another world. What went through their heads was that perhaps Robin had found these creatures crammed underground somewhere, or perhaps they were humans like them, but they were put under some kind of artificial mutations that transformed into this form. But another world. Everything that was going through their minds about what is happening right now has faded. Everything they knew about their reality began to be reevaluated. At that moment, Water Empress Victoria thought of something and shouted as she pointed toward Robin. You sold your soul to aliens and showed them the location of our planet in order to avenge your family? Did you sell our lands, our treasures, and our lives for personal revenge? Traitor! By that moment, Wind Emperor Alexander and Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth had thought about it as well. They didn't say anything but started to reevaluate the way they deal with Robin. They were now not dealing with someone who had established a vassal force in the ancestral land, but with someone who is an agent of another planet. This is also why they knew Robin wouldn't lie about this matter, because it is a very serious matter that would reshape his status from a leader and founder of a powerful force into a traitor. How idiotic! Sokka shook his head when he heard Water Empress Victoria. She wanted to go after Victoria to say something or even attack Sokka. But this time she didn't need anyone to hold her back. She stood her ground by herself. At first, She had some confidence that the forces of the three empires united could stop Robin. But if the demons really came from another world, then perhaps what they saw till now was not the true size of their forces. Perhaps Robin's confident threats about taking over the planet weren't that far-reaching. My master and the master of my race, His Excellency Robin, hid the coordinates of the planet from everyone except for 2 or 3 people close to him, and we are not here to greed for trivialities that you call treasures and your lands that are equal to nothing when compared to our territories in Nahari, but rather we are here to follow him and die from him. You people really don't appreciate the person sitting in front of you, even where we are from. He is the boss. Soccer spoke in his usual rough voice, then continued his speech while looking at the Empress of Water Victoria from top to bottom. Supposing that His Excellency is satisfied with you and accepts your oath of allegiance to him and decides to truly link the 2 planets, then you are the ones who will benefit from this and not us. Do you think if His Excellency only wanted revenge, he would want to make peace with you? Or do you think that if he is our agent, we would want that? We demons only want to eat. All the demons here wish you would decline His Excellency's offer and leave right now. Seriously, we hope you do. Caesar, Billy, and the rest of the humans at the top of the hill looked at Robin beside their eyes with looks of utmost respect and reverence. All of them without exception thought at first the same way the 3 emperors did when they saw the demons for the first time, that Robin betrayed the planet out of revenge. And after what happened to them, and that they want revenge more than anything, they just went with the flow and fought alongside the demons. But there was something in them against what was happening, especially since Robin did not tell them about what happened in Nahari. And none of the demons opened his mouth with a word either. Seeing the demons treat Robin with the greatest possible respect has always dispelled some doubts from their chests over time. And now Soccer's words have dispelled these doubts completely. Robin has reached a stage where he can be called a boss in the other world. He is the boss in where you come from? He is a leading figure in another world. How? That is definitely a lie. Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth ignored Soccer's direct threat and his outrageous thirst for blood, and muttered in a low voice as she still kept her eyes on Robin. Didn't old Goo tell them that Robin was the son of a small noble family from the ancestral land? That there is no doubt about his origin, birth, and lineage? How is it possible that at his young age, he went to another world and became a leader there and gained such powerful and loyal followers? Jabba spoke this time, crossing his hands on his chest. It's a long story that can be explained later. Very briefly, let's say that you are not standing now in front of someone who has worked hard to take over the ancestral continent and seeks to take over this little world of yours, but rather you are standing with someone who has already achieved beyond this. Whatever lands and treasures you have are nothing to him if he tells you there is the threat of an invasion is coming. It is coming, it's that simple. Then he added after a few seconds' pause, "Go back to your seats and listen to his terms. As he said, this world will be his. Even if not today or tomorrow, this world will be his. Use your brains and make the most of it. Give him what he wants and he would give you benefits that you can never dream of. His Excellency is quite generous when he wants to be." After hearing those words, Wind Emperor Alexander's gnashing of teeth could clearly be heard from anywhere on the hill. But after a few seconds, the gnashing ended with a long sigh. Then Emperor Wind Alexander walked back to his seat, placed his hands on the table, and looked at Robin. "What are those benefits?" A slight smile appeared on Robin's face when he heard Wind Emperor Alexander's question, and then began to speak. "As far as I know, the founding of your empires came tens of thousands of years after the start of the cultivation era, as 4 geniuses managed to discover the major laws of the 4 most visible and abundant paths that existed in nature: fire, water, plants, and wind. And whoever discovers a major law will not find it very difficult to discover the rest of the advanced levels of that major law. So I can imagine that the same 4 individuals who discovered those major laws were able to reach at least an intermediate sage level before they died. Then the next generations who opened their eyes and found major laws ready for development were definitely able to bring the techniques of those 4 major laws to the pinnacle of the sagehood realm. And perhaps only 5,000 years after the death of the founders of your empire, one of them was able to take an extra half step towards the next realm, one that is famous in Nahari by the name the Emperor's Realm, which gives the 4 of you this extraordinary strength, although you are still sages. But after the first 5,000 years of establishing your empires, You have not been able to advance in your technique another half step no matter how hard you try, after about 15,000 years have passed. You must have submitted to fate and thought that it is impossible to break through to a higher realm. If you might have even convinced yourselves that there is no higher cultivation realm. There are of course time differences when those events occurred in each of your empires, but everything I said now all your empires have undoubtedly gone through, right? Please correct me if I am wrong. Right. Wind Emperor Alexander replied with a frown. At the beginning of Robin's speech, he raised his eyebrows in astonishment. He did not know why Robin started a history class. However, as he progressed, he began to say facts and things that he did not expect to touch upon. Rather, he was not aware of how he knew them in the first place. Good, good. Robin nodded twice with a slight smile still on his lips, then raised his head and looked into Wind Emperor Alexander's eyes. What is stopping you to break through to that higher realm in your opinion? Break through to a higher realm? Impossible. You said it yourself, we tried a lot for almost 15,000 years, but to no avail. We cannot make a proper technique for the fourth degree of any of the four major laws, as if there is something missing or the traditional pillar method no longer works after the third degree. All we managed to get were glimpses of how to temporarily increase our strength to a higher level than the rest of the sages, but that method is full of gaps and doesn't get to the point where we can say it's a higher cultivation realm. Alexander shook his head. A method to increase your strength? You mean using your life force to force the law you trained on to materialize? Theoretically, this technique can fully utilize a person's comprehension of their own law and fully utilize every hair of energy or momentum in their body. The person who thought of this method is a real genius, but Robin spoke quickly until he reached that last point and then slowly continued. Activating it draws out a person's life force as fast as a loose arrow. Activating it for just a few minutes can swallow up hundreds of years of your lifespan. On top of that, the materialization of the laws is not perfect. It puts huge pressure on your soul. Also, it is not as strong as he is supposed to be. If this technique was executed perfectly, you should have been at least 100 times stronger even as sages. Robin Burton, humph. I can't even imagine how foolish you must be to tell lies like that one after the other. Water Empress Victoria said angrily. I'm sure you haven't even seen this technique activated in your life, but you talk like you are an expert that knows everything about it, and even talking about its ideal form. Do you say we should be 100 times stronger? Do you even know the maximum strength of one of us right now? Do you know what I can do to you? Robin was unfazed by what he heard as looked at Water Empress Victoria with that same smile. I know more than you think. Old Goo's memories were useful for more than identifying some criminals. Actually, I know that you are still a virgin even though you are an old 900-year-old hag. Is this the reason why you are always angry? Maybe you should lower your nose a little bit if you want to get a man. I will kill you. Water Emperor Victoria angrily shouted and pulled a short dagger from behind her back. But the Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth, who was standing next to her, quickly grabbed her arm before making any further movement. Calm down, Victoria. You are right again about the problems we are facing with that technique, but then what? We can't verify this 100-fold more power issue you are talking about. What's the point of all that you said? So far, we haven't touched on anything useful. Where are those benefits your boys were talking about? Wind Emperor Alexander ignored what was happening around him and spoke. Robin chuckled slightly as he watched Water Empress Victoria and Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth, before turning back to look at Wind Emperor Alexander, and said, Every word I said had a meaning, and now it's time for the important question. Do you want to solve the problems of your law's materialization technique? And most importantly, do you want to break through to the Emperor's cultivation realm? Are you saying you can invent these methods? And most importantly, you say you can give them to us? Wind Emperor Alexander slightly furrowed his eyebrows as he spoke. This is correct. Robin nodded. Hee. Ha ha ha. Alexander slapped his hand on his thigh and started laughing loudly. Are you saying that you can do what our ancestors for nearly 20,000 years could not do? And you will do it for 4 different major laws as well. How many thousands of years will we have to wait before you fulfill this promise of yours? Do you want full loyalty right now in return for something you might or might now do in thousands of years to come? I thought you would provide some good argument, but it turns out I was wasting my time. A half-smile appeared on Water Empress Victoria's face, and with a humph, she pulled her arm from Elizabeth's, as if to say that there was no reason to attack Robin anymore after his crazy words. As for old Goo, he looked at Robin with wide-open eyes and quickened breaths. If there was a single person on the back of this world who could say such a thing, it was undoubtedly Robin. A ball of white flame appeared in Robin's hand. I trust everyone here has seen this flame at least once by now. Let me formally introduce it to you. This is Mr. Perfect Flame. It is the absolute model of the Major Fire Law without any loopholes or interference with other laws. Because the Flame Empire's Major Fire Law was muddy and full of loopholes, it was destined to never reach the 4th stage, let alone 20,000 years. Even if the Flame Emperors spent another 200,000 years, they would not reach the 4th stage before they restructured the Fire Major's technique that they own and deliver it to a degree of purity of at least 90%. Which is no way close to the pureness of the flame that I hold in my hand now, by the way. Robin then moved his other hand and a metal tablet appeared in it. Then gently threw it towards old Goo and spoke. Old man, you will find here the perfect major heavenly law of fire technique from the 1st stage all the way to the 3rd stage. The perfect major fire heavenly law. When old Goo took the tablet, his heart began to beat like a war drum. This was the Empire's highest ambition and the foremost goal of conquering Jura City. It wasn't the talismans themselves that moved the Empire to intervene, but rather the 3 kings' words about pure white flames, and the fact that there were strange inscriptions that could produce an explosion of such extreme purity. A purity that made them feel that what they had been using all those years can't be even called a flame. They did not come for the talismans, but for the white flames that those talismans produce. They came to the ancestral continent to produce a new young generation for the Empire who would use this pure flame, a generation that might make any discoveries in the 4th stage of the major heavenly law of fire technique. It is true that this law was still only in its 2nd stage, and it is true that young generations will have to try to research it for thousands of years to come, but it is better than nothing, a place to start. And when they saw with their own eyes the Fire Legion using that white flame during the battles against the Burton family, they became even more convinced that this might be the key to reaching the next stage, the key to ruling the whole world. But when they arrived in Jura City and started capturing the prisoners, their hopes were shattered on the rock called the Oath Tablets, and after more than 10 years, they still couldn't reach this white flame technique. But now, after being defeated in the worst way possible, with nothing to bargain with and already taking the oath, Robin threw it into his arms. Old Goo looked up again toward Robin to thank him, but he found him throwing another metal tablet at him and speaking. This is the foundation modification technique. With this technique, any inner energy cultivation foundation can be modified using a law technique from the same heavenly path. You can even modify your previous cultivation foundation using a law from another path, but only some minor modifications. I don't recommend that though, as it would be too hard to get to the next stage. This. Old Goo's hands started to tremble as he grabbed the 2nd metal tablet. A technique that can modify the previous cultivation foundation. Even he didn't know that such a technique existed. This time, even old Goo forgot that he had to thank Robin and began to mutter as he looked at the 2 tablets in his hand. Wait, if I have the perfect fire major heavenly law technique, and I have the technique for adjusting the foundation of my previous cultivation, then can I? Robin understood what old Goo was aiming at, then spoke with a smile. Yes, you and the rest of the sages of Flame Empire can freely use white flames. You will have a 100% pure technique with all energy levels perfectly explained up to level 40. Even if I give you guys 4th stage technique in the future, you can simply discover it for yourselves in less than 1,000 years. Wind Emperor Alexander was busy turning his gaze between the 2 metal tablets and Robin. He didn't know what exactly those tablets were used for, but Robin's words were true. They are dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Humph, again you are just saying words that can't be proven without them trying it for many years, and you demand allegiance with it now. What is wrong with you? And what are those metal plates exactly? You made the sages of Flame Empire swear while holding them, and now you are throwing them at Uncle Goo as if you are doing him a favor? Is this a joke? Or do you feel in control while doing these useless things? Water Empress Victoria sneered and then continued. You see, old man? You have sworn allegiance to him, but things are thrown at your face to belittle you. If I were you, I would ignore that oath and... Before Victoria could complete her speech, she heard something hitting the ground, and when she looked to her side, she saw something she thought she would never see. Old Goo is kneeling towards Robin on both feet and looking at the ground, shouting loudly, "We thank your excellency for this precious opportunity. We will strive to become better followers under your leadership." "What the? Have you lost your mind, Goo?" Victoria yelled when she saw this and then looked behind her at the rest of the sages of Flame Empire. "Did you see the person you're taking as a leader? He is a... We thank His Excellency for this precious opportunity. You all..." Water Empress Victoria's eyes opened wide when she saw this sight. She even forgot how to breathe for a moment. Even the Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth and Wind Emperor Alexander were looking around as if they had seen the strangest thing in their lives. They weren't even as shocked when they saw the demons for the first time. Old Goo, the Flame Emperor, fell to his knees, bowing to Robin, and all the sages of the Flame Emperor fell to their knees after him. Any one of those sages could have wreaked havoc on the entire ancestral continent unchecked just 2 years ago. Actually, one of them had already done so by mobilizing the armies of the Seven Kingdoms to march under his banner in the war against the Borton family. Each and every one of those sages has self-respect and an ego as high as the sky. But they all knelt? Old Goo did not command them to do as he did, and there was no condition in the oath they took that compelled them to do something like this either. Rather, by looking at their faces, it seemed that there was no one of them annoyed by his kneeling. On the contrary, their faces and auras expressed overwhelming joy. Some of them even started to shed tears of joy. Could it be? The Wind Emperor muttered in a low voice, but the same thought struck the 3 emperors at the same time. The only thing that could attract such a reaction was that Old Goo and all the sages of Flame Empire believed every word Robin said without the slightest shred of doubt. If everything said is true, then... Wind Emperor Alexander thought and looked at Old Goo, who was still kneeling on the ground. The Flame Empire had barely pledged allegiance to Robin, but he had actually given them such an opportunity. A while ago, Victoria was talking about how humiliating they were, but in 1,000 years from now Flame Empire would have the first true expert beyond the sagehood realm. No, even if they ignored the fact that a person beyond the sagehood realm had appeared, the fact that all the experts of the Flame Empire would use that white flames meant that in just a few years they would come back from their destruction to stand on an equal footing with the rest of the empires at the very least. Who should be mocking whom now? Ha ha! Stand up, old man. You are with me now, you have to get used to things like this. Robin chuckled and gestured to Old Goo and the rest of the sages of the Flame Empire around him to stand up. Thank you. Thank you. Old Goo stood up and went back to his seat, this time cradling the 2 metal plates in his arms as if he was cuddling his baby. Before he came to the ancestral continent, he was trying to guess what would happen to him and the Flame Empire. Would everyone within his sagehood realm be killed? Will he kill some and leave the rest alive? Will their offspring turn into slaves? Will any of them actually survive? It was all about the whim of someone he'd never seen. A barely 200-year-old named Robin Burton with the power to decide the fate of his empire with a word. Robin Burton, the one who has now elevated Flame Empire with a word too. Maybe what happened so far. Maybe that war and that oath. Maybe everything wasn't all bad. Vroom! Immediately and without another word being said, Robin swiped a green-colored energy into the ball of white flames that were still burning in his hand. This? Everyone furrowed their brows at the same time when they saw what was happening. Even Old Goo himself was looking at Robin's hand with great curiosity. The little white ball of flame took the shape of a dragon, and that dragon began to circle around Robin's hand happily and let out a gentle intermittent roar. But this was not the most eye-catching for them. It was the eyes of the little dragon. Its eyes seemed full of children's mischief and love of exploration. They seemed full of life. How is that possible? Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth took 2 steps forward and started examining the dragon more carefully. This dragon looked like... What? Don't you see now that it reminds you of something? A certain thing that you boast about approaching the realm above saghood. Robin asked with a wry smile. This is undoubtedly the divine decree incarnation. No, it's somehow different. The Sacred Tree Empress suddenly exclaimed. but once again muttered in a low voice. Humph, it's much weaker. Perhaps he saw the divine decree incarnation technique in Old Goo's memory and tried to imitate it with this pathetic version. Victoria spoke sharply, but curiosity was evident in her eyes. Imitating the divine decree incarnation just by seeing someone's memories? That's still hard to imagine. Alexander furrowed his eyebrows. He knew more than everyone how difficult this technique was and how many years it took him to train to master it. No, we have received many reports of beasts made of fire, wind, and darkness permeating them with life, and that they are the most difficult enemy that our forces faced throughout their time in the Ancestors' continent. And the same report came from the sage who escaped from the battle of the Central Continent as well. Old Goo muttered as he watched the dragon move. This was the first time Old Goo had seen this technique. It had not been used during the war on the Flame Empire continent, probably because there was no need for it. Robin gave a chuckle and added, "This is just an ordinary ball of flame into which I pass energy powered by the major heavenly law of life. Just something I thought of a few years ago to make dispensable soldiers that can cause considerable destruction behind the enemy line without actually losing a life. Coming to think of it, I didn't even give it a name. The divine decree incarnation, huh? That's exaggerated, but it sounds like a good name to me, haha. Anyway, the difference between the incarnation that I created and that of your ancestors is that, first of all, mine is limited to a certain amount of energy. For example, this ball will still retain the amount of energy that I formed it with, and it will start to weaken over time if I do not inject more into it. Secondly, the life energy that carries out the incarnation process is relatively weak and limited energy. It can be said that it gives temporary awareness to the object based on reactions and absolute obedience to the one who formed it only. Thirdly, in my divine decree incarnation process, what comes to life is not the law, but the ball of the flame itself, and therefore it attacks or defends and so on according to the will of the one who formed it and depending on the amount of energy available to it. As I said, it is just a way to form additional dispensable soldiers. As for yours, the amount of energy available for use is almost open, as the divine decree incarnation will withdraw your energy without permission as long as it is activated, so it will only disappear or weaken if you are defeated. Secondly, the life energy used to give it awareness is your life itself, and therefore it is very strong and extremely condensed, and therefore the attribute of life is more visible in your embodiment. Thirdly, what is incarnated using this technique is the law or laws that you have spent your life studying and something you can control or force to take a specific shape. With everything being said, yours is more powerful, rather terrifying in fact. Of course, all of this is what your ancestors who took that path wanted to achieve, and I admit that it is a technique that is many times more powerful than the one I thought of, but the techniques of your laws are full of loopholes. Your inner energy runs out quickly, and your life energy that burns as a candle spilled with oil had failed the real form of that technique and made it out in the form you are practicing now. I, Robin Burton, have decided to adopt this technique. I can come up with the solutions to these three problems and teach them to you. Only I can deliver the divine decree incarnation to its true power. The major heavenly law of life? Wind Emperor Alexander ignored all of Robin's words and clung to that term. Robin's words are undoubtedly correct regarding the defects of the divine decree incarnation technique, but his words about finding solutions are still mere words that cannot be measured anyway now. Only the major heavenly law of life that he spoke of can be weighed. The major heavenly law of life. Just its name suggests its level. It is undoubtedly a law far above all the major heavenly laws they know, and Robin has it right now. Yes, I have a life master law technique, all that up to the third stage as well. Do you know what else I have? A perfect technique for the major heavenly law of plants, and you know what? I will give both of these techniques to the Sacred Tree Empire. Using the Life Major Heavenly Law technique as a side stat will enable users of the Major Heavenly Law of Plants technique to grow plants whenever and anywhere they want instead of just moving the plants around or going through the pain of trying to unearth their roots. I think this will increase your strength a bit. Am I right, Miss Elizabeth? Robin smiled back, then turned his gaze towards the Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth. Perfect technique for the major heavenly law of plants. A perfect technique for the major heavenly law of life. Elizabeth muttered in a low voice, her eyes still focused on the little dragon. But obvious changes began to appear in them. Wind Emperor Alexander looked at Elizabeth with a stern look as if to say, "Take it easy." when he saw her muttering and her eyes seemed to be daydreaming. This will weaken her negotiating position, and theirs as well. Sacred Tree Empress Elizabeth had indeed shook her head slightly to regain her clarity of mind. She knew what Alexander meant by his look. There is no free diner in this world. Robin's offer was related to Sacred Tree Empress declaring absolute loyalty to him. But, is that too bad? Elizabeth thought to herself. Once they declared their allegiance, they would have the chance to break through to the realm above the sagehood realm. A chance for something that they long thought is impossible. And they would even receive more major law techniques as well, techniques of laws that are even higher in existence than the ones they are proud about. He said that he would not order them to do anything but confront the invasions coming from other worlds, if there were one dash. And this actually makes sense. Even without swearing their loyalty to him, they will have to cooperate to confront aliens coming to take what is theirs. Suddenly Elizabeth felt that Alexander's look at her wasn't for her own benefit. She even felt that they contained some jealousy. I also happen to have the perfect major wind heavenly law technique, and I have other laws like the minor soil law with which you can control grains of dirt in the air, and the minor pressure law which will enable you to compress wind blade attacks in a way that you have never dreamed of before. I think you know what this means for the Wind Empire, right, Mr. Alexander? Robin smiled and looked at the Wind Emperor. Wind Emperor Alexander clenched his fist when he heard Robin's words. Of course, he knew what this meant. Any one of those benefits Robin mentioned could instantly double the power of an imperial army. And not only his empire, only the major heavenly law of life that Robin announced he would give to the Sacred Tree Empire could change the strength and depth of their empire forever, regardless of all the other things he offered them. Before Robin opened his mouth and whispered about those advantages of each empire, and now is something completely different. Now they have a general vision of their future. Now Alexander's major fear is that they will refuse Robin's offer and leave, for now, then one of them will stab the rest in the back and decide to hug Robin's feet for some of those benefits. That wasn't too far-fetched, and actually it would be strange if none of them did something like that. And the thing is, the first to do it will be the ultimate winner. After about a minute, Alexander regained a bit of his clarity, gritted his teeth, and then asked, "This great generosity in exchange for an oath similar to what the sages of the Flame Empire took, right?" "True." Robin nodded while chuckling. "Everything I created or will create comes to you free after saying a few words. Isn't that a good deal? Can't we make a peace treaty and agree to cooperate only in the event of an outside invasion?" Alexander asked again. "No, I will not make such a treaty with you to be broken sooner or later. This planet shall enjoy true and everlasting peace, even if it means shedding some blood now." Robin shook his head and replied, "Bloodshed? Is that what you want to do if we reject your offer now? We either submit everything our ancestors worked for or you attack us. Isn't there a middle ground we can come up with?" Alexander asked again quickly. He appeared to be really at the end of the rope. Robin's smile grew larger and he shook his head again. "No, as I said, the planet will be mine and this is a done deal. By the end of this day, I will simply declare that all continents are mine whether we agreed on terms or not, and that whoever rejects my rule is a rebel who deserves death, and war will be declared on him until he is killed. Do not think that you can wait until the last moment and then submit as the Flame Empire did. I wasted a lot of time and effort with you today, and this will not be without a price. Believe me, I will not be merciful against you if you choose to rebel against my rule. When you are defeated, I will not accept your loyalty. I don't need you now, and I certainly will not need your loyalty in the future. I only speak to you now out of mercy. But if you choose to rebel, then nothing awaits you but death. You will declare that we are rebels who deserve death because we want to defend our lands that were found and ruled by our ancestors for more than 20,000 years? I have never heard something so shameless before." Victoria suddenly shouted when she heard those words. Robin shrugged. "The world changes. Nothing stays as it is forever. That is a cosmetic law, so change with it or simply die. With or without you, I will be done. It won't be us who die." "Humph, as I predicted. Today failed miserably. We should have started the war right away. Let's go." Victoria spoke with the tip of her nose and then began to take steps towards the ships anchored on the shore. but her feet were caught in the air when she heard Elizabeth's charming voice coming from behind. "Hey, give me one of those metal tablets.